Sisters and brothers, loved by Jesus Christ, where does our help come from? Our help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth, and from Jesus Christ, who is the same yesterday, today, and forever. You know, Jesus prophesied that if his disciples didn't proclaim the good news of his power to save, then the very stones would cry out. It's, of course, a metaphor, but did you know there was a story in the Bible about stones that actually do testify to God's redeeming power? The story is in Joshua chapter 4, and there we are told that 12 broad-shouldered, burly Israelites pick up stones from the middle of the dry Jordan River and carry them to their first campsite as they entered the promised land. And there they stacked those stones as a testimony to God's faithfulness to his covenant promises that brought his people out of Egypt and into the promised land. Now, of course, those stones didn't literally speak, but they were silent sentinels to testify to God's redeeming power. And they testified of the Lord's faithfulness to his people who were in between in their story of redemption. Behind them was 40 years of wandering in the wilderness, and ahead of them is the land of milk and honey. They were in between. Behind them was Mount Sinai and the Ten Commandments, and ahead of them are the thick walls of the city of Jericho. Behind them are the graves of the people who had died in those 40 years, and ahead of them are the giants who stand opposed to them. And the stones testified to the present generation that God, who had been faithful in their past, promised to continue to be faithful to them in the challenges of their future. But you know, it was too small a thing for those stones to testify only to God's family. The story in Joshua ends by saying that the stones testify so that the people of the earth might know that the hand of the Lord is powerful. These 12 talking stones are a testimony to the world. They tell the story of the God who redeemed his slave people by his mighty hand out of Egypt. And you know, the testimony of those 12 stones was heard and received by the people of the world. Just 2 chapters later, in chapter 6, Rahab and her whole family hear the story and they are saved. And then again in chapter 9, the Gibeonites hear the testimony of God's power to save and they are saved. Now, if the testimony of stones communicates God's power, then imagine what can happen when you and I tell the story of Jesus' saving power in our lives. Now may the peace of Christ go with you wherever you may be. May he guide you through the wilderness and protect you in the storm. May he fill you with thanksgiving at the wonders he has shown you, and may he bring us all home rejoicing face to face again once more. Go in peace.